I thought my daughter was taking me out for a peaceful Mother's Day dinner, until a trembling waiter slipped me a note. Don't drink the wine she poured. What happened after I switched the glasses exposed a secret life I never imagined my own child was hiding. The note contained only a few words, but they were enough to turn a Mother's Day dinner into something Colleen Morrison would never forget. Don't drink the wine your daughter poured. And underneath that, one more sentence. I know what she put in it. Colleen was 61 years old. The woman sitting across from her was Jolie, her 33-year-old daughter, the child she had raised, protected, worried over, and loved through every stage of her life. 10 minutes earlier, Jolie had been smiling and telling her mother how beautiful she looked. Now Colleen was staring at a glass of red wine and wondering whether her own daughter had put something inside it. What would you do in that moment? Would you stand up and confront her? Would you run? Or would disbelief hold you in your chair because accepting the warning meant accepting something almost impossible? That the person you trusted most might be the person you needed to fear? That question is exactly why this story has stayed with me. Welcome to It When Family Breaks One. Here, I want us to look beyond the shock of family betrayal and ask what happens underneath it. How trust breaks, why warning signs are missed, and whether love can survive once the truth comes out. And before we go any further, if stories like this make you think about family, trust, boundaries, and the choices people make when everything falls apart, subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me keep bringing you stories worth talking about. That Mother's Day evening had started almost perfectly. Jolie had chosen Romano's, a restaurant filled with memories for both of them. Colleen had sat in those same booths while celebrating Jolie's high school graduation, her college acceptance, and eventually her first serious job. It was one of those places that felt almost like part of the family history. That was what made the evening feel so wrong. Nothing obvious had happened. There had been no argument, no accusation, no raised voice, just small things. Jolie smiled, but the expression never seemed to settle naturally on her face. She laughed at the right moments, yet the laughter ended too quickly. Her shoulders stayed tense. She checked her phone repeatedly and then apologized each time as if she had prepared the apology before Colleen even noticed. Colleen tried to dismiss it. Maybe Jolie was stressed. Maybe something was happening with work. Maybe Mother's Day simply made her emotional. I think most of us understand that instinct. When something feels wrong with someone we love, we often search for the explanation that hurts the least. We don't immediately think betrayal. We think exhaustion, pressure, a bad week, anything but danger. Then came the wine. Jolie ordered a bottle of Merlot before Colleen had made up her mind. "Let me treat you tonight," she said. "You always choose the cheapest thing." It sounded affectionate, even playful. When the waiter brought the bottle, Jolie reached for it. "I'll pour for Mom." The waiter hesitated. His name was Marcus. Colleen had noticed him earlier because he seemed unusually attentive to their table. He had refilled their water twice, adjusted silverware that didn't need adjusting, passed nearby more often than necessary. At first, Colleen assumed he was simply a nervous employee trying too hard. Jolie filled her mother's glass generously. Her own glass received much less. "There," she said. "Now you can relax." Colleen smiled and thanked her. But she didn't drink, not because she suspected Jolie. Not yet. She was still looking at the menu when Jolie excused herself to the restroom. The moment she disappeared down the hallway, Marcus approached. He did not ask whether Colleen needed anything. He did not smile. He looked toward the restroom, then back at her. His hand shook slightly as he moved her bread plate. Underneath it, he slipped a folded piece of paper. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Please read that." Then he walked away before Colleen could ask a question. She opened the note beneath the table. "Don't drink the wine your daughter poured. I know what she put in it." For a few seconds, Colleen's mind refused to accept the words. Her first thought was not, "My daughter is trying to hurt me." It was, "There must be some mistake." That reaction tells us something important about trust. When danger comes from a stranger, fear arrives quickly. When danger appears to come from family, disbelief often arrives first. Colleen looked at the glass. Deep red wine reflected the restaurant lights. It looked completely ordinary. Then she began replaying the evening. Jolie had chosen the bottle. Jolie had poured it herself. Jolie had made sure Colleen's glass was fuller. And earlier, when Colleen reached for water, Jolie had casually said, "You should try the wine." At the time, it meant nothing. Now it meant something. That is one of the cruel things about discovering deception. The past changes. Words you thought were kind begin to sound calculated. Gestures you thought were loving become suspicious. Memories don't disappear, but suddenly you are forced to examine them from another angle. Colleen slipped the note into her purse. She had barely closed it when she heard Jolie returning. "Sorry, Mom," Jolie said as she sat down. The line was ridiculous, then her eyes moved directly to the wine. "You still haven't tried it?" Colleen felt something tighten inside her. "I was waiting for you," Jolie smiled. "Then let's toast," she lifted her glass. Colleen did the same. "To mothers and daughters," Jolie said. "To family bonds that never break." The words were almost unbearable. Their glasses touched. Colleen raised hers toward her lips but did not actually drink. Jolie watched, not casually, carefully. "Do you like it? I haven't really tasted it yet. Take a real sip." Jolie laughed immediately afterward, disguising the pressure as a joke. Colleen laughed too, but now she was studying her daughter. And suddenly she noticed what she had not wanted to notice before. Jolie wasn't simply hoping she enjoyed the wine. She needed her to drink it. There is a difference. Colleen decided she could not confront her yet. If Marcus was wrong, accusing her daughter of something so terrible could destroy their relationship. But if Marcus was right, Colleen needed to understand what was happening before Jolie realized she had been warned. "I'm going to wash my hands," she said. Jolie frowned. "Now? I'll only be a minute." Colleen walked toward the restroom but stopped behind a decorative column where she could still see their booth. She watched Jolie look left, then right. The smile disappeared. Jolie reached toward the glasses. She switched their positions. Then she hesitated, staring at them as if trying to remember which was which. She took the smallest possible taste from one glass. Almost immediately, she grimaced and reached for water. Colleen's stomach dropped. Marcus had not imagined it. Something was wrong with that wine. And whatever explanation Colleen had been using to protect herself from the truth was no longer strong enough. She returned to the table on legs that felt strangely weak. Jolie looked up and smiled again. There it was, the same familiar face. The face of the daughter Colleen had known for 33 years. And that, to me, is what makes this moment so disturbing. Nothing about Jolie suddenly looked evil. She still looked like Jolie. That is how betrayal often works inside families. The person does not transform into a stranger before your eyes. They remain painfully recognizable, even after you begin questioning everything you thought you knew about them. "Feel better?" Jolie asked. "Much. Good. Now you can finally enjoy your wine." Colleen looked at the glass between them. She knew she would not drink it, but she also knew that leaving immediately would answer only one question. Was the wine dangerous? Yes. The much bigger question remained. Why? Why would Jolie need her own mother confused, sleepy, or unable to think clearly on Mother's Day? What could possibly be important enough to justify that betrayal? And as Colleen would soon discover, the answer was not hidden inside that glass. It was hidden inside a secret life her daughter had been building for years. The question Colleen carried back to the table was no longer whether something was wrong with the wine, but what kind of secret could make a daughter need her own mother confused enough to stop asking questions? Jolie was waiting for her with a brittle smile. "You disappeared on me. Just needed a minute." Colleen sat down and reached for her water instead of the wine. Jolie noticed. Of course she noticed. That was when the pressure became harder to disguise. "You're really not going to try it? I told you, my stomach feels a little off. You were fine when we got here." The sharpness in Jolie's voice appeared and vanished so quickly that someone who loved her less might have missed it. Colleen did not. Once Colleen understood she might be manipulated, ordinary details changed meaning. A pause became calculation. A question became pressure. A smile became something she studied instead of trusted. The appetizers arrived, and Jolie tried another route. "You know, that merlot would go really well with this," Colleen smiled. "Maybe later." A few minutes passed. Jolie checked her phone. Then again. Then a third time. Her fingers tapped the table in a nervous rhythm. "What's going on?" Colleen asked. "Nothing. You've been staring at that phone all night." "It's work." Colleen paused. Jolie had told her she had been between jobs for months. "What work?" The question landed unexpectedly hard. Jolie froze, only for a second. "Consulting. I picked up a little freelance project." Another plausible explanation. But once lying begins, plausibility becomes part of the problem. A lie only needs to be believable enough to buy another few minutes. Jolie's phone rang. She stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "I need to take this." The moment she stepped away, Colleen caught Marcus's eye. He came over immediately. "What do you know?" she whispered. Marcus lowered his voice. He told her he worked part-time at a pharmacy downtown. The day before, Jolie had come in asking questions about strong sleep medication. She claimed her mother had trouble sleeping and wanted something that would work fast. Marcus had refused to give her anything requiring a prescription, but Jolie kept pushing, asking what was stronger, what would make someone drowsy, what worked quickly. He had thought about that conversation after she left. Then he saw Jolie at Romano's. And when he noticed her pouring Colleen's wine while Colleen was distracted, his concern turned into alarm. "I don't know exactly what she put in there," he said, "but I wouldn't drink it." Colleen felt the last piece of denial fall away. This had not started at the restaurant. Jolie had prepared for it. Preparation meant Jolie had opportunities to stop, confess, ask for help, or choose another path before Colleen ever sat at that table. "Do you want me to call someone?" Marcus asked. Colleen looked toward the entrance, where Jolie was still on the phone. "Not yet. That choice makes me uncomfortable. A suspected tampered drink should be avoided and help sought." But Colleen was thinking like a mother whose understanding of her daughter had just cracked open. She needed to know why. Jolie came back flushed. "Sorry, crisis. At your freelance job?" Jolie's eyes flickered. "Yes," Colleen nodded. No confrontation. Not yet. They continued dinner under a tension so thick that even silence felt like dialogue. Jolie kept returning to the wine. "Just one sip. You might like it. Don't let it go to waste." Harmless alone. The sentences formed a pattern. Then Jolie's phone rang again. This time she stepped farther away. Colleen excused herself and moved toward the same decorative column she had used before. She could not hear every word, but she heard enough. "It's not working." A pause. "She won't drink it." Colleen's chest tightened. Jolie lowered her voice. "I can't force her." Another pause. This was supposed to be subtle. Until then, part of Colleen still wanted Marcus to be wrong. Now Jolie had said it herself. There was a plan. Someone else knew about it. Someone else expected it to work. And whatever Jolie had put in the wine was only one step. Colleen returned before Jolie noticed her. This time, she made a choice driven by fear and the need to understand what was unfolding. During another distraction, the glasses ended up reversed again, leaving the suspicious drink in front of Jolie. This should not be treated as real-world advice. A potentially tampered drink should be left untouched and appropriate help sought. In Colleen's story, the decision came from panic and a desperate need for proof. When Jolie sat down, Colleen touched her own glass. "You know what? Maybe I'm ready for that wine." The relief on Jolie's face was immediate. Finally, they raised their glasses. Colleen barely touched hers to her lips. Jolie took a real drink, then another. For several minutes, nothing happened. Colleen almost wondered whether she had misunderstood everything. Then Jolie blinked hard. Her hand moved to the edge of the table. "Mom, what? I feel strange." Her voice had changed, slower, heavier. Jolie tried to focus on Colleen, but her eyes seemed unable to settle. "I'm dizzy." Whatever anger Colleen held mixed with fear. She saw her daughter struggling and reacted as a mother before she could react as a betrayed woman. Marcus hurried over. Together, they moved Jolie into a private dining room where she could sit away from the noise. Jolie's phone started ringing. She answered with clumsy fingers. A man's voice came through the speaker, impatient. "I can't think straight," Jolie mumbled. The man said something Colleen could not catch. Jolie started crying. "I did exactly what you told me." Colleen went still. "I put it in her wine, but she wouldn't drink it. There it was. No more guessing." Then came the sentence that changed the mystery again. "No, I can't get her to sign anything now." Sign what? Colleen leaned closer. The man became angrier. He accused Jolie of failing. Then Colleen heard a number. $60,000. Jolie owed someone $60,000. The man mentioned consequences if the money was not paid. Then he mentioned paperwork. Inheritance paperwork. Colleen felt dropped into someone else's life. She knew nothing about an inheritance. Nothing about $60,000. Nothing about the man controlling the conversation. Yet Jolie clearly understood every word. The caller kept talking, and each fragment widened the hole beneath Colleen's feet. Debt, money, a deadline, a signature, and then something about gambling. That was the moment the story stopped being about a poisoned glass and became about a hidden life. Jolie had been carrying something for a long time. Something expensive, something frightening, something serious enough that she had convinced herself drugging her own mother was somehow an option. And I think this is where we have to hold two truths at once. Jolie was being pressured. She was frightened. But she had also made choices. Fear can explain why someone crosses a line. It cannot erase the line after they cross it. The man's voice grew colder. Jolie begged him to stop. Then he said enough for Colleen to understand that dangerous people were waiting for money Jolie did not have. Jolie looked toward her mother. Their eyes met, and Colleen watched recognition spread across her daughter's face. She knew Colleen had heard. "Mom," Jolie whispered. Colleen's voice was quiet. "What were you trying to get me to sign?" Jolie shook her head. "I don't know what you mean. I heard you." "No, Jolie." Her daughter tried to sit upright. She could not. The effects were becoming stronger. Her eyelids dropped, her words blurred, and before Colleen could ask another question, Jolie collapsed forward. Colleen caught her. A woman discovers that her own daughter tried to manipulate her, and when that daughter falls, the mother still reaches out. Love does not always disappear when trust breaks. Sometimes that is what gives a family another chance. Sometimes it is what makes betrayal even harder to escape. Colleen called her sister Margaret, a retired nurse, and asked her to come immediately. As she waited, she sat beside Jolie in the private room and looked at the phone lying on the table. She now knew 4 things. Jolie had tried to impair her. Someone else was directing her. There was $60,000 involved, and there was inheritance paperwork Colleen had never seen. What she did not know was how deep any of it went. By the time that night ended, she would begin to discover that the debt, the gambling, and the missing paperwork were not separate problems. They were pieces of the same secret life. And the next truth would hurt far more than the note Marcus had slipped beneath her plate. By the time Margaret arrived and helped get Jolie to the hospital, Colleen understood that the real danger was no longer the drink on the restaurant table, but the life her daughter had been hiding behind years of familiar smiles. Hospitals have a way of stripping away appearances. Under the bright fluorescent lights, Jolie no longer looked like the confident woman who had walked into Romano's earlier that evening. Her makeup was smudged. Her face looked thinner than Colleen remembered. There were dark circles under her eyes that suddenly seemed impossible to ignore. The doctor said Jolie would need to be monitored for several hours but was stable. That should have comforted Colleen. It didn't, because once the immediate fear passed, the questions came rushing back. $60,000, gambling, a signature, an inheritance Colleen knew nothing about, and a man named Rick who seemed to know far more about Jolie's life than her own mother did. Margaret sat beside her in the waiting area. "You need answers," she said. Colleen nodded. But I think what Colleen really needed was something even harder. She needed the truth without the protection love had given her for years. That is not easy. When someone we love starts falling apart, we often notice pieces before we accept the pattern. A canceled dinner, a strange excuse, money problems, mood swings, phone calls that end when we enter the room. We see the fragments. We just don't always want to assemble them. While Jolie slept, Colleen called David, Jolie's former boyfriend. They had dated for 2 years before separating 6 months earlier. Colleen had always liked him, but Jolie never explained exactly why the relationship ended. When David answered, Colleen asked one question. Did Jolie have a gambling problem? The silence on the other end lasted too long. Then David said, I tried to help her. Those 5 words told Colleen that whatever had happened did not begin on Mother's Day. David explained that Jolie's gambling started small. Casino trips, online betting, amounts that seemed manageable. Then she began chasing losses. Every time she lost, she believed the next bet could repair the damage. She emptied savings, borrowed money, made promises, broke them. David once found her searching for cash after she had already lost more than she could afford. He tried confronting her. He tried getting friends involved. Jolie accused him of trying to control her and pushed him away. Eventually, he left. Listening to him, Colleen felt a painful realization settle in. Jolie had not simply hidden a bad habit. She had built an entire system around protecting it. And addiction often does that. The addiction becomes one problem. Then hiding it becomes another. Then the lies required to protect the hiding become another. Eventually, people are no longer trying to solve the original problem. They are trying to keep the truth from arriving. Near midnight, Jolie was awake enough to talk. Colleen pulled a chair close to the bed. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Colleen said, "Tell me about the inheritance." Jolie stared at the blanket. "Great Aunt Millicent left you money." "How much?" $200,000. Colleen felt her breath catch. She had never received a letter, never spoken to an attorney, never been told there was anything to claim. "The lawyer has been trying to contact you," Jolie continued. "Then why didn't she?" Jolie's eyes filled with tears. "Because I stopped the calls. That hurt more than Colleen expected." "What do you mean you stopped them?" "I intercepted the messages. Some of the mail, too." "Why?" Jolie looked away. "Rick said we needed time." "We?" Jolie began crying. Then came the part that changed the betrayal from financial desperation into something much deeper. Jolie had told the attorney, Patricia Hendress, that she helped care for Colleen. She had also suggested that Colleen sometimes struggled with memory and decision-making. Colleen stared at her daughter. "You told someone I couldn't manage my own affairs? It wasn't supposed to go that far." But it did. Rick said it would make things easier if there were questions about the paperwork. Colleen sat back. "I think this was the moment that cut deepest. Money can be replaced. Trust can sometimes be rebuilt. But having someone you love quietly undermine your right to make decisions about your own life attacks something fundamental. Autonomy, dignity, the right to speak for yourself." Jolie had not only been trying to get money, she had been creating a version of her mother that was easier to control. And that is something worth paying attention to in any story involving family and finances. Concern becomes dangerous when it turns into control. Helping becomes exploitation when one person starts hiding information, making decisions without consent, or telling others that someone is incapable simply because it makes access easier. Colleen asked about the debt. Jolie finally told her everything. The gambling had been escalating for 2 or 3 years. One night at a casino, after losing money she could not afford to lose, she met Rick. He seemed sympathetic. He told her she was smart. He told her she had simply been unlucky. He introduced her to larger games and people willing to front money. At first, Jolie believed she had found a way out. Instead, the losses grew. 15,000 became more. Interest accumulated. New debts replaced old ones. Eventually, she believed she owed around $60,000 to people she was afraid of. But that still wasn't the entire problem. "How much did you take from work?" Colleen asked. Jolie went silent. "Jolie, $47,000. Colleen stared at her. $47,000? Over about 18 months. Jolie insisted she had always planned to replace it. She had convinced herself it was temporary. One big win would restore the money before anyone noticed. But the win never came. An annual audit was approaching. Soon the company would discover the missing funds. That meant Jolie was trapped between 2 consequences she had spent years avoiding. The people demanding gambling money, and the employer who would eventually discover what she had done. Then the inheritance appeared. $200,000. Enough, in Jolie's mind, to erase everything. Pay the debt. Replace the company money. Hide the addiction. Keep her job. Keep her mother from ever discovering who she had become. That is what desperation can do when it is allowed to grow inside secrecy. It turns consequences into enemies. Instead of asking, "How do I face what I've done?" the person begins asking, "How do I make sure nobody ever finds out?" Jolie told Colleen that Rick had suggested the plan. Intercept the inheritance information. Make the lawyer believe Jolie was managing things for her mother. Get Colleen's signature while she was too impaired to ask difficult questions. Then tell her later that the inheritance had been much smaller. Colleen listened without interrupting. The hardest part was realizing that Jolie had imagined what would happen afterward. She would continue visiting, continue calling her mom, continue sitting across from her at dinner, and Colleen would never know. That was not a single impulsive mistake. That was a future built on deception. I was scared, Jolie whispered. I know. I didn't know what else to do. There were other choices. They all ended with me losing everything. Colleen looked at her daughter. And this choice ended with you almost losing me. Jolie broke down. This is where I think the story becomes more complicated than simply asking whether Jolie deserves forgiveness. Addiction explains part of her collapse. Fear explains part of it. Rick's pressure explains part of it. But explanation is not absolution. Jolie still made decisions. She still crossed boundaries. She still harmed people. And yet responsibility does not require us to pretend recovery is impossible. Colleen could be angry and still want her daughter alive. She could refuse to excuse Jolie's behavior and still refuse to abandon her. Both could be true. Then Jolie's phone buzzed. One new message. She read it and went pale. Rick wanted to meet that evening at the usual place near the casino. He wanted good news. Jolie shook her head. I can't go. You're not going, Colleen said. Mom, you don't understand what he's capable of. Then tell me. Jolie looked terrified. And for the first time that night, Colleen saw something beneath all the lies. Not innocence, not helplessness, fear, real fear. That was when Colleen made the decision that would define everything that came next. She would help her daughter get out of immediate danger, but she would not help her escape responsibility. There would be treatment. There would be honesty. There would be consequences. And whatever happened with Rick, Jolie would no longer be allowed to solve her problems by sacrificing someone else's life, money, or dignity. Because sometimes loving someone does not mean rescuing them from the consequences of their choices. Sometimes it means helping them become strong enough to finally face them. The key revelations in this section. Jolie's gambling history, the roughly $47,000 taken from her employer, the $200,000 inheritance, and her misrepresentation of Colleen's cognitive condition, are grounded in the original story. Once Colleen decided that helping Jolie could not mean erasing the consequences of what she had done, the next question became painfully practical. How do you protect someone you love without becoming the person who keeps their addiction alive? The first call Colleen made was to Patricia Hendress, the attorney handling Great Aunt Millicent's estate. Patricia sounded cautious at first. For weeks, she had been receiving information suggesting that Colleen was having difficulty managing her own affairs. Jolie had presented herself as the person helping her mother handle important decisions, so Colleen did something simple but powerful. She spoke for herself, clearly, calmly. She explained that she was fully capable of understanding her finances, making decisions, and handling the inheritance. She had never authorized Jolie to intercept her correspondence or represent her as cognitively impaired. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then Patricia's tone changed. She began speaking directly to Colleen as the legal owner of the inheritance, not as a problem being managed through someone else. I keep coming back to that moment because it represents something bigger than money. For most of the night, other people had been making decisions around Colleen. Jolie had decided what she should know. Rick had decided how her inheritance should be used. Even the story being told about Colleen's mental ability had been created without her participation. That phone call was the first time she took the center of her own life back. Patricia confirmed that the inheritance was approximately $200,000. She also made it clear that the situation Jolie had created was serious, and that Colleen should consider appropriate professional and legal support before making further decisions. Colleen understood, but there was another problem waiting for her. Rick. Jolie believed he expected money immediately. And while Colleen refused to excuse her daughter's actions, she also refused to ignore the fear she had seen in Jolie's face. After discussing the estate arrangements, Colleen chose to make $75,000 available to address the immediate financial crisis described in the story. The remaining $125,000 would stay protected. It would not be handed to Jolie. It would not become emergency money for another bad decision. That distinction mattered. When Colleen returned home, Jolie was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, emotionally, like someone who had finally reached the point where there was nowhere left to hide. "I talked to Patricia," Colleen said. Jolie lowered her eyes. "And? The inheritance is real." Jolie said nothing. "I'm willing to help you deal with the immediate danger." Jolie looked up so quickly that hope appeared before she could hide it. Then Colleen continued, "But you're going to hear my conditions first." The hope became fear again. "You're getting professional treatment for the gambling," Jolie nodded. "You're going to therapy." "Yes." "You're cutting contact with Rick and everyone connected to that world." "Yes." "And you're telling your employer about the missing money." Jolie went still. "Mom, no, they could fire me. They might. They could take legal action. They might." "Then why are you doing any of this?" Colleen looked directly at her. "Because keeping you safe is not the same as protecting you from accountability." That is the line I think every parent listening to this story should sit with. There is a dangerous temptation when someone we love is in crisis. We want to make the fear stop, so we pay, we cover, we explain, we call in favors, we clean up the evidence of another bad decision. And sometimes we tell ourselves that this is love. But if every consequence disappears, what reason does the destructive pattern have to change? Colleen was willing to help Jolie survive the crisis. She was not willing to help her continue the life that created it. Jolie began crying. "I'm scared. I know. What if I lose everything? Then we deal with what remains." That answer was different from the promises Jolie had spent years making to herself. She had always believed she needed one perfect solution. One win, one loan, one secret, one signature. Something that would restore her old life without requiring her to admit what had happened. Colleen was offering something harder, a life rebuilt honestly. Later that evening came the confrontation with Rick. In the story, Colleen chose to meet him herself. I want to be very clear about how I look at this part. It is emotionally dramatic, but it should not be treated as a model for handling threats in real life. Situations involving intimidation, illegal lending, or possible violence can be dangerous, and appropriate professional or law enforcement assistance may be the safer path. But Colleen was acting as a frightened mother who believed her daughter was in immediate danger. Rick arrived appearing exactly as Jolie had described him. Calm, well-dressed, controlled. He behaved as though they were discussing an ordinary business matter. Colleen told him Jolie would not be coming. Then she showed him the $75,000 she had prepared. Rick looked at the amount and tried to push for more. He knew the inheritance was larger. That realization made Colleen's stomach turn. Jolie had told him enough about her mother's private affairs that he believed he could negotiate over money that had never belonged to him. When Colleen refused to increase the amount, Rick's tone changed. The politeness thinned. He implied that unpaid debts brought consequences. Then he suggested that those consequences could extend beyond Jolie. Colleen was afraid, but fear was no longer controlling her in the same way it had at Romano's, because now she understood the pattern. Threats worked best when they remained private. So in the story, Colleen had preserved evidence of the conversation and made it clear that Rick's words were no longer disappearing into secrecy. His confidence changed. Eventually, he accepted the amount and left. Colleen remained sitting in her car long after he disappeared. She did not feel victorious. She felt exhausted. And that matters. This was not revenge. There was no satisfaction in discovering how badly her daughter's life had collapsed. There was only relief that one immediate threat had been reduced. When Colleen returned home, Jolie rushed toward her. "It's over?" "This part is." Jolie started crying with relief. But Colleen did not let relief become another escape. "Tomorrow," she said, "we deal with your employer." The color left Jolie's face. "You promised." "I know." "And after that, treatment," Jolie nodded. This was the real beginning of recovery. Not the money, not Rick leaving, not even the apology. Recovery began when Jolie stopped being allowed to solve one consequence by creating another lie. According to the story, she later admitted the missing funds to her employer and was eventually allowed to remain under strict repayment conditions. She also entered treatment and began participating in gambling recovery support. Those outcomes were not rewards. They were responsibilities. And Colleen finally understood something I think many families learn painfully late. You cannot recover for another adult. You can open a door. You can sit beside them. You can help them find treatment. But you cannot walk through the difficult part for them. Jolie had spent years hoping someone or something would erase the damage. Now she had to do something far harder. She had to live honestly inside the consequences and prove, one decision at a time, that the person she had become did not have to be the person she remained. The core events here: Patricia confirming the inheritance, Colleen allocating $75,000 while protecting the remaining $125,000, the confrontation with Rick, and Jolie's commitment to treatment and employer accountability. Follow the original story's progression. 6 months later, the hardest part of Jolie's recovery was no longer surviving the immediate crisis, but proving through ordinary days that change could last after the fear was gone. She had completed the rehabilitation program. She was attending Gamblers Anonymous 3 times a week. She had stayed away from gambling for 184 days, and her employer had kept her under a strict repayment arrangement. None of that erased what she had done. Colleen knew better than to confuse progress with a clean slate. That distinction matters to me. We often talk about forgiveness as if it is the final scene in a movie. Someone apologizes, the music softens, 2 people cry, and the wound closes. Real families are rarely that simple. Trust does not return because someone says the right words once. It comes back slowly, if it comes back at all, through repeated behavior that no longer demands applause. When Jolie began packing to move into her own apartment, Colleen stood in the doorway and watched her fold clothes into a suitcase. The apartment was modest. The car Jolie drove was used. Her budget was tight. For someone who had spent years chasing the fantasy of one big win, there was something almost healing about the smallness of that new life. Everything in it had to be real. No hidden money, no borrowed image, no secret rescue waiting behind another lie. "You sure you're ready?" Colleen asked. Jolie looked at her and gave a tired smile. "I'm scared," Colleen nodded. "That's more honest than pretending you're not." Jolie sat down on the edge of the bed. "Mom, I need to say something," Colleen waited. "I'm sorry." She had heard those words before, but this time Jolie did not rush through them. "I'm sorry I tried to drug you. I'm sorry I tried to take your inheritance. I'm sorry I lied about your ability to make your own decisions. And I'm sorry I let my addiction become something everyone around me had to pay for." Colleen felt the familiar ache return. This apology was different because Jolie was no longer asking it to remove consequences. She was simply naming the harm. That is one of the biggest differences between regret and accountability. Regret says, "I hate what this cost me." Accountability says, "I understand what this cost you." Colleen reached for her daughter's hand. "I believe you're trying." Jolie's eyes filled. "Do you forgive me?" Colleen did not answer immediately. "I'm learning how. I think that answer is more honest than an instant yes. Forgiveness does not have to mean restoring the relationship to the exact shape it had before the betrayal. Sometimes the old relationship is the thing that cannot survive. What can survive is something new, something with stronger boundaries, something that leaves room for love without requiring blindness. Colleen still loved Jolie, but she no longer believed love meant protecting her from every consequence. Jolie still loved her mother, but now that love had to include respecting Colleen's autonomy, her money, her choices, and her right to say no. The remaining inheritance stayed protected. Colleen began thinking about using part of it to help other families facing gambling addiction. I find that meaningful. The money that almost became the instrument of betrayal could become part of someone else's recovery. Not because money fixes addiction. It doesn't. Money bought Jolie time. What changed her direction was treatment, truth, structure, support, and the daily decision not to run back toward the thing that had nearly destroyed her life. As Jolie loaded the last suitcase into her car, Colleen stood outside and watched. There had been a time when she believed getting her daughter back meant returning to the person Jolie used to be. Now she understood that neither of them could go backward. Jolie had to become someone different. So did Colleen. One had to learn how to live without gambling. The other had to learn how to love without rescuing. And maybe that is why this story stays with me. The deepest question was never whether Colleen still loved her daughter. She did. The real question was what love should look like after trust had been broken. That difference can save families, so I want to leave that with you. If your own child betrayed you this deeply, could you still help them rebuild? And where, in your mind, does compassion end and enabling begin? Because when family breaks, healing is not always about putting everything back the way it was. Sometimes healing means building something new, with enough love to stay connected and enough truth to never return to the same damage again. Kate. What stays with me most about Colleen and Jolie's story is not the poisoned glass, the hidden inheritance, or even the money. It is the uncomfortable truth that love can survive betrayal, but it cannot survive denial forever. Colleen learned that the daughter she trusted had been hiding an addiction, financial desperation, and a growing pattern of deception. Jolie's choices were serious. She lied, manipulated her mother's access to information, misrepresented her ability to make decisions, and allowed fear to push her toward an act that could have caused real harm. None of that should be minimized. But the story also refuses to reduce Jolie to one terrible decision. She was responsible for what she did, yet she was also someone who had become trapped inside addiction, shame, debt, and fear. That does not excuse her behavior. It explains why real recovery required more than punishment. She needed treatment, accountability, honesty, and the willingness to live with consequences she had spent years trying to avoid. And Colleen had to change too. She had to learn that being a loving mother did not mean fixing every crisis for her adult child. She could protect Jolie from immediate danger without protecting her from the truth. She could offer support without handing over control. She could forgive without pretending nothing happened. That may be the deepest lesson here. Healthy love needs boundaries. If someone you care about is struggling, helping them does not always mean giving them money, hiding their mistakes, or rescuing them from every consequence. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is help them find professional support, encourage honesty, protect your own finances and independence, and refuse to participate in another lie. In our own lives, that can mean paying attention when behavior suddenly changes. It can mean asking questions when money, secrecy, addiction, or unexplained pressure begins affecting a relationship. It can mean keeping direct access to your own financial and legal information instead of allowing someone else to control it without your full understanding. And it can mean recognizing that forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. You can forgive someone and still require them to rebuild trust. You can love someone and still say no. You can support recovery without becoming responsible for it. And sometimes rebuilding a family does not mean returning to what existed before. It means creating a healthier relationship that could not have existed until the truth was finally exposed. So here's the question I would genuinely like to hear your answer to. If you were Colleen, would you give Jolie another chance after everything she had done? Please share your answer in the comments so everyone can read different perspectives and learn from one another. And if you value stories that explore family betrayal, difficult choices, boundaries, and second chances, please subscribe to it When Family Breaks One. Your support helps the channel continue creating more meaningful stories like this.